talking about the sign of Cancer. We're looking at it being the first of the water signs. So we started with Aries at spring equinox, being fire sign. We went on to Taurus, the second sign, being the middle of spring, an earth sign. We had Gemini, the third sign of the zodiac, which was the last sign of the spring season. And now we arrive at the sign of the crab, or Cancer the crab. And this is the fourth sign of the zodiac. So in the sequence of the astrological year, we started with fire, the outbursting of things, the beginning, the establishment of Taurus, the variable spread of Gemini. And now we're coming to, when all these things have happened, well, the next thing is to have some nurturing, to have the idea of something coming back to the folds of self, back to the folds of where something could be found, some care or some nurturing or some sympathy or compassion. And that is very much the element of water. So the crab is the first water sign, and it starts at the summer solstice. And people might say, well, why is the hottest time in the Northern Hemisphere, the hottest time of the year is the summer solstice? The sun's at its highest in the sky, there's lots of heat, and yet it's a water sign. Well, yes, it is. That's because, you see, the idea is that that there's so much going on with the heat, if you like, of the summer, that people have to seek the scorching heat of the noontide sun. People have to then seek somewhere cooler and shadier. So they go indoors or they go under cover, naturally, right? Because they have to find a place where they can cool off. And also all the growing crops out in the fields are getting parched by the heat, and they need to be nurtured with water. You have to go to the well, fill up the buckets and water the plants and the crops in order for them to nurture and to keep growing. So this is why at summer solstice, the hottest time of the year, the moon becomes, or the sign of the crab rules for 30 days. And that coolness is like the midnight radiance of the moon. When the moon is full and you get that kind of cooling light, you go out at the full moon, and I do urge you to do this every full moon, is to go out there and experience some of that night. When you go out there and you get that full moonlight, and as astrologers, you'll start to really perceive that light as being something very particular, okay? And what we're looking at here is the idea of the characteristic of the moon. The moon is the planet that rules the sign of Cancer the crab, okay? So lunar things are very linked to the sign of Cancer. They have an intrinsic connection together. When you're out in that moonlight and you get that full moonlight of the full moon, you will perceive actually the characteristic of the sign you will sense the idea of what Cancer and the crab and is like. Okay, and it's cool or cold and moist. And this is actually that nature, the nature of that, or the characteristic of this sign. So it's a water sign. And temperament is phlegmatic, okay? Which can be it can be a water that in the body, that's one of the natures of people with a lot of planets in Cancer, can be very phlegmatic. That's a whole other branch of astrology that I just can't go into now, but just so you know that the temperament is that. I want you to start thinking about the symbol of Cancer the crab is like this, okay? Like that, yeah? It's like this. And what's actually happening there is the sun at the Aries, beginning at the spring equinox, the sun crosses the equator. And that is the equal day and night. Then the sun moves up by declination. It moves gradually up 3 months, moves up to the Tropic of Cancer, which is 23.5 degrees above the equator. So the Tropic of Cancer, that's why on maps of the world, you see this thing that says Tropic of Cancer above the equator, and then below it, underneath in the southern hemisphere, Tropic of Capricorn. they are very important points, of course, in the zodiac. But astronomers use them, and geographers use them. The point being is that the sun reaches that point at the summer solstice, so it's called the Tropic of Cancer, and the sun has ascended upwards, right, to the highest point, and then once it's had summer solstice, it starts to descend again. So you get the idea of that symbol, which also happens to look like a crab protecting itself with its two claws. So, which is its archetypal symbol. So you have this sense of being protected, but the sun moving backwards. It rose up to the heights, and then it starts to go backwards, and back down again. And when you look at a crab and how it moves, they move sideways, or it's like they don't exactly move backwards, but they definitely move sideways. Next time you see one on the sand, go looking for one, and you'll see, or find a YouTube video or something. You'll see how they scuttle to the side a bit, and that's actually how they make their achievements. They do things in a very sideways action. Cancerians can do, which we'll go into detail. So the crab is, it sees the labors of humanity with a favorable eye and rewards our toils with a plenteous harvest. So what's actually happening, of course, at this time is after Gemini, the branches have spread, the leaf growth and the spread of the branches, and the fruit starts to form. That's actually what's happening, which is a nurturing thing, because with that, what will come from that will be the nurturing. So it's the action of the growth of things on the branches or in the crops or whatever it's going to be. That's it's like the ripening, if you like. The ripening is actually Leo, which will be the next sign. But it's the idea that the growth is occurring. Okay, which is becoming a nurturing thing. The plant or the object that's growing is nurturing that fruit so it grows. So the thing about the crab is it is very tenacious. Okay, doesn't like to let go of anything. Okay, that's why it's pictured as a crab with claws. But what the Cancerian must do is develop patience in life. Patience is the all-important key to everything, and that's when it's evolving correctly with maturity. All maturity occurs as then it becomes more patient. And so as the moon waxes and wanes, so the nature of the Cancerian waxes and wanes. So this is a sign that is loaded with the power of moods. Moods is a huge thing for them. Okay, so you either get them in full radiance or maybe eclipsed. But it's the thing about Cancerians is that they're going to be ever constant in their inconstancy. So once a Cancerian has seized an object, got it, once it's got something, that can be, anything in life really, right? It means to have it, right? And by having it, it would rather lose its claw than let it go, right? They're tenacious. And then if they happen to lose it, they would even regrow a claw, right? Because they would be so attached to something. So they can take hold again. So the power of this in life, right, is actually a reference to Mother Nature. Mother Nature is the Cancer, the crab, or the Cancerian, if you like, or can be represented as that part of the sign that is very powerful, very, very protective. Protective being a huge Cancerian word. So when you go to the idea of the mythologies, you want to look up the myths of Artemis, of Diana, of Selene. Okay, these are all very linked to the moon and to the attributes or characteristics of the sign of Cancer. Okay, so the the physical correlation of the crab in the body, right, is the stomach, the breasts, and the glands. The sort of sense of the task that Cancer has is about forming emotional bonds. All right, they're very keen to express deep feelings and really get to create a bond. That's the grip of the claw. You know, it's like come here so I can really feel you. So that's and that's to a certain extent is like Mother Nature, or the nurturing development of mother and child, if you like, and the development of families, of course. So the highly evolved Cancerian is one who is the master and mistress of their many moods. They know when the moods are coming along, they recognize them, they know how to work with them, they know how to control them and how to use them and put them to good use. And as I said, protection, safety, and security is paramount. Now, Cancer, the sign, is also a cardinal sign. So it's a water element, but it's also cardinal, which is like the four signs of the zodiac are cardinal. Aries, we've already talked about, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And these are the signs that are linked to the beginning of each of the seasons. So Aries begins the spring, Cancer begins the summer, Libra will begin the autumn, and Capricorn will begin the winter, as you will discover as we go through the course. So these cardinal signs, they are very motivated, okay? They have a very initiative-taking, they're very expressive, and they'll go out and get something. But what they need, Aries needs to be unhindered. Cancer needs to feel safe. So if you can make a Cancerian feel safe and secure, they can do phenomenal things, particularly things like business, for example. They are phenomenal at what they can do, right? A good example of this would be Richard Branson, very Cancerian, right? Lived on a houseboat in the canal in London, in Regent's Canal in the late 1960s. That's where he got his whole thing. It started off for him, living on the water. But I mean, that's a kind of a sort of overlook there. But what it was he had to feel safe and secure within his scene. And when he did that, he was then able to realize he could make money from records. That's how it started for him, which was a sense of belonging. He needed to find a way to have a sense of belonging. And so that's an example of a Cancerian. These days, multimillionaire or billionaire, lives on an island, you know. So again, very connected to the water, or a little bit of family-based isolation there. He has the whole family on the island with him, but he lives on an island. So that's just a little example, and I've got some very good examples for you tonight. He's just one that popped into my head then because I thought I'd tell you that. But there are others as well. So I'm going to show you a whole set of Cancerians tonight. But with Cancerians, the function is to use the whole gamut of emotions, all right, in order to inspire, right? And to vitalize and inspire people. You know, in a way, they become very good teachers of emotion. You know, they can have. You know, they feel it all, the joy, the sorrow, the compassion, the horror, and the despair. You know, they seize the imagination. They have a very powerful imagination. And they hold it with the power of imagery and the intensity of their own feelings. So their imagination is paramount, right? I mean, very strong for them, very, very strong. So the sense of the Cancerian, because of that powerful imagination, they also have a very good memory because they see things very vividly. So they see the past. They can also see the future. They have it very clear in their way they do things. And so, in a sense, their memory is very retentive. You know, again, it's like the clause. You know, I remembered that. You know, and the history of their own lives, or their family, or you know, people that they know, is very important. So they will hold the torch lit by past experience. Well, I remember that. No one else will, but I do, says the Cancerian. And therefore, when they've got the past experience lit up, they can guide the future. So there's a bit of emotional wisdom that the Cancerian has often. So in a way, that makes them, again, the idea of a teacher, but par excellence, you might say. They do it very well. And the style that they do things in is quite picturesque and vivid. So they might, and even a little bit dramatic. But again, you see, this is when you bring in the idea of moods, and how moods can be delivered, sulkingly, powerfully, happily, sadly. And these are it's how they deliver and the message, and preserving its essence by what they're trying to transmit or what they're experiencing, and therefore what they're trying to get across to others. So very early memories of childhood are extremely important. Old ties of friendship. The Cancerian is the sort of that's very like a little bit of a sacred treasure for Cancerians. Oh, I remember I knew you back in so-and-so. Could have been decades ago, right? They might not have ever seen them since, right? But they still have this fabulous friendship, all the memories retained. So they will correspond for years with people whom they knew a bit, right? Or they might have been attracted to them in their early teens. Oh God, my first love. And they're still on the phone to them, decades later, So it's like, they might not have even met them, they might be living in different countries even, but they're like, oh yeah, and chatting like old friends, and possibly will never meet again even, but they still will be very, linked, linked by memory and linked by emotion and mood and feelings. So the recollection and vivid pictures of childhood and their younger years, remain very strong in their lives. And, so they do not like injustice, Cancerians. They need to have some sort of fairness. Actually, in a funny sort of way, the cardinal signs do seek that. And I'm talking, as you'll see, there's a feature. You see, the cardinal signs will have their own features, and this will be another lesson. You'll understand this. I'll get right into it. But for now, I'm just giving you that sort of the basic Cancerian traits, if you like. So they don't forget, but an evolved Cancerian will understand and have sympathy to forgive, but they still won't forget. So, but they have a very loving, loyal, and sympathetic nature, and they love a good bit of chivalry and heroism, they can't go wrong with that, The old water rally throwing the cloak down to walk across the muddy puddle is a very kind of, it's a kind of like, oh yes, you had the feelings to do that, and that sort of thing. It's that kind of chivalric kind of thing, if you like. So the very strong links associated with the idea of home, hereditary, the motherland, the fatherland, it's all good food for the imagination, which still grows. The Cancerian's imagination will continue to grow throughout their lives because it's their moods and feelings are how they feed their soul, a water sign. So they need to have that interaction with others. They need to feel those moods and have those emotions because that moves them forwards, you see? And then and their own wisdom is growing all the time. So, in a way, that imagination needs a craving, constant nourishment. So they'll always move forward for that. But when they're starved of that, they can become very morbid, or even, should we say, diseased, because they're not getting what they need. They're nurturing. They get. Oh, well, I'm not getting what I need, and it can show, and so. Things like, a sense of the untruthfulness of things. You're not giving me the feelings that I need. They can be like this, you see. So they're very, very powerful like that. And in a way, they are the sort of sign who create great poets, great romantics, songwriters, artists, but because they put those feelings across, you see, and their principle really is that they have feelings, and the feelings go right back to the inner child, that they must address that inner child all the time. It's still there. It always is there. And in fact, actually, because we are all parts of the zodiac, all of us have all 12 signs play a part in our lives. Often the Cancerian part is often that, the distant connection to mother and the inner child and things like that. Okay. So they are very easily swayed by sentimentalism and sensationalism, and they can exaggerate their emotions of all the kinds, and a Cancerian who's not being very evolved, right? Might not be, will be full of, often quite easily aggravated by contradictions and inconsistencies. These are some of the things that you have to look out for sometimes. As a Cancerian who gets blah blah blah, and they've got two things going on, and and the idea of contradictions, if you like. Okay, so they are often wanting to prove their self-sufficiency. I don't need you, a Cancer might say, and but actually then a couple of months down the line, they do, and they come back. And do you remember what it used to be like? Can we go back to what it used to be like? Because they relate to the past, So it can be the nature of Cancerians, you see. So sometimes there's sometimes fierce pride and independence. I'll set my own thing up. I'll start my own thing. I don't need any of you lot. A Cancerian might say to their family, for example, and then they charge off to go and do their own thing, and then they come back, or they then that's swapped or alternates, if you like, with then the helplessness and the loneliness. I never knew it was going to be like that, and so they lose their way. They can do anyway, So it's about for a Cancerian's life journey. It's about finding that balance. Where they go, I've got to go off and do my own thing, and then realizing that actually family is paramount. Family is the key. So it's the idea of the two conditions there are a bit like the crab in its normal state, which would be encased in its natural armor of the plated bone, right? A crab, right? And all the little knobs and joints and elbows and claws, which are very defensive, and then, but if you just peel if you look under the shell, you have it's ready for defense, it's ready for aggression, but underneath, it's scarcely recognizable because it's so sensitive, and so you get the potentially the thin-skinned, helpless, semi-transparent, going, I need my shell, and they do. They naturally need their shell. And the shell for them is the sense of security and protectiveness. And they find that with those who are able to work with their emotions and feel like they do. So that's how, Cancerians can be. So, that sometimes you see they'll get a lot of shyness and depression a bit. They shy away. They go and hide away for a bit, and then they'll reemerge into the light. To regain their own self-respect. But family matters are very good with Cancerians. That's really where they focus. So if you ever have to talk to a Cancerian who seems to be lost, talks about the importance of family and to heal their family issues, What is it that's holding you back? Well, I can't seem to get ahead in life, or whatever, or no one seems to understand me, or that sort of thing. You need to start talking about what's important with family and whether they should be making their own family to give them that sense of, that sort of thing, or returning to the family. Is these sort of things are big Cancerian issues. Okay. And as I said, ancestry, hereditary, the idea of generations after generations, of being in the nest together, or the rock pool. I might have talked about the rock pool before, but I think it's one of my favorites for describing the Cancerian metaphor, or what it's like to be. As the tide rushes into the rock pool, the crab's very familiar with what's in there. It knows the different types of shells and sands and the different sizes of rocks and the different types of seaweeds and anemones and everything that's in there. And it gets familiar with it. And so it feels safe. But then the tide comes along, swirls it all around, swirls it around, new stuff comes in, old stuff goes out, and it all settles down again. And the crab had to hide in the corner whilst all that was going on, to then have to reassess what's in there and go, oh, well, so some things changed. Oh, well done, you stayed, and oh, that's good. And it has to reassess its life again based on what it's experiencing, how it feels for things, and that happens on a regular basis. It's constant in its inconstancy. Like the moon phases. The moon changes mood all the time, and so Cancerians do as well. So when you meet a Cancerian, they're likely to be, funnily enough, they look quite bony, but they tend to maybe have long limbs, quite long arms and legs that are quite long in proportion to the body. So, and quite broad shoulders, maybe large hands and feet. Often they can be, they often have quite an overhanging brow. Their eyes are very big and often eyes are very big and watery. Okay. And as in, you can get lost in the pools of eyes, if you like. They have quite high cheekbones, and sometimes quite a lower jaw with quite prominent teeth, sometimes, possibly irregular teeth. The mouth tends to be wide and expressive, and good smiles. They're very good smilers. Cancerians have a nice smile when they offer it. With sometimes eyes blue, quite grayish. They can be possibly short-sighted because they only see what's in the rock pool. They only need things close sometimes. And the eyes can be quite deep set, as I say, quite large, watery eyes, deep set as well, and sometimes quite wide apart. Eyelashes that are long and curly, so they're drawing you into the eyes. Eyebrows that are usually quite distinctly marked. Sometimes meeting in the middle. The monobrow can be quite Cancerian. And the hair gets very silky, quite waxen, and is quite soft and plentiful. So they quite a substantial head of hair, and often blonde or light brown. And they go grey quite quickly, or silver. They go silver, or white. That's actually because of course the moon rules the metal silver and the color white. So with their wisdom, their emotional wisdom, and their understanding of how they see life, so comes the color. And so that's quite a sort of Cancerian things. When it comes to things like health, they've got to look out for. They have to really be wary of not worrying. A Cancerian's problems can be a lot to do with worry. So it's actually a mental thing because they have very strong unconscious imagery Okay, so a lot of imagery comes up that they can't put words to, but they see it very strongly. This can then make them worry a lot. So it's almost as if there can be ill-controlled feelings, a morbid imagination, is one of the things that gets them, they find difficulty, they can have difficulty with. They can be quite, they have a touchiness or sometimes a bitterness or resentment, hurt pride. These are things that that could be considered serious factors leading to their health matters. So, they've got to keep the body healthy. So they need to work through these matters. If you have a Cancerian needs healing, you have to talk to them about, the things like resentment and hurt pride and bitterness and, how someone let them down or how they couldn't get back with someone or how, these sort of things are hugely important for the Cancerian, So that's often the case, They need inner contentment, okay? They really do, right? And they are full of instinct. They are full of reaction. They have very strong attachments and needs. I mean, these are totally, really massive Cancerian keywords right there, So, it's about ancestral memory. It's the imprint of something, Cancerian is a sort of person who would work in a photocopy shop or something like that, or printing, imprint, is where you might find them, you see. And the Cancerian is the spirit of themselves that needs to listen to its own inward being, right? Its own, it has to find its self-satisfaction or happiness or contentment within. So it's a water sign, you see. So it's an inward water sign. Another way of seeing the Cancerian metaphor is actually the mountain spring, that tumbles down the mountain. It's that form of water. There are 3 water signs. So there's Cancer. We've done the first water sign today. Then there will be Scorpio and Pisces. But again, we'll be looking at those later. But it's the mountain spring that's as gathering emotion, if you like, as it moves. And another Cancerian emotion or can be seen to be the tides on the beach. So even though Pisces is the ocean, it's when the water runs up the sand and then moves like that sideways or downwards or back, and you get those movements with the ripples across the sand. That's very Cancerian in its nature, and it actually does look like a bit like the crab movement as well. So some sort of things to conjure up the idea of that wateriness that can be used when talking to Cancerians. You can talk in that way, and they can associate with that. Cancerians have the idea of what feels deeply for them. So it's heart-centered based stuff. It's the idea of establishing roots and home and family is so important. Emotional contentment, connecting with the source of all life. They must connect with the source. What is it for them, And when they think back to their past memories, I loved my family. I loved my mother. I loved, the people in my life. And, and that's what's important for them. And in an ideal world, they would love without conditions. So it's very much the sense of, how can they love? How can I love? How can I be the best at what I do, as it were? So romantics, very romantic. I think I might have said that already. And very devoted, but they are enthusiastic for their devotion. And then the flip side of that, of course, is that they can be very possessive. So They like to be all helping and caring. So nurses and doctors, that's where you find Cancerians. In fact, the NHS has a Cancerian chart. The sun was in the sign of Cancer when the NHS was founded I think it was July 1947, the beginning of July. I've got the chart for it somewhere, but it was when the sun was in Cancer. So they are people who like to help because they want others to get feeling too. If they show caring instinct, then others might follow and do the same. Because humanity needs to be caring. We all need to look after each other. And that is one of the greatest healings that Cancerians can discover in themselves as well, to be nurturing, to look after others, to make sure that everyone shares the same feelings that they do. And so it's, developing that common sense and worldly wisdom, a love that is strong and lasting, a real sympathy and understanding. These are long-term Cancerian lessons. They are often have a very strong maternal element that is characterized by that great yearning to give something and not ask for anything in return. So therefore, you're looking at compassion as well. So, yeah. The Cancerian is a dreamer. That's why they're good at art, poetry, writing. But they're also a psychologist. They get right into the psyche because of the imagination and the imagery. And they can be they like to connect very deeply to the understanding of the soul's purpose for each and every person. And in a way that is, some Cancerians can be very wishful thinkers, they can dream a lot, not necessarily make things real, but they dream a lot. And so that's, yeah. I think that's quite good for Cancer for now. The two planets is the ruler of the moon. The moon rules Cancer. Okay, so that's why I've associated it so much tonight with the sign of Cancer. Okay, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So once every 12 years, Jupiter goes into Cancer, spends a year, and that's an exaltation. That's a marvelous place for it to be. And the Fool, the planet that's not happy in the sign of Cancer, is Mars, and the planet in its detriment, the planet that is again not happy there, is Saturn. So when I say not happy, I'm not going to say that you should ever say you shouldn't actually talk about detriment and Fool planets in that way. They are planets with situations in one's life that might not be considered to be particularly well matched, as in it presents challenges. So people with Mars in Cancer or Saturn in Cancer, there are certain things that can be eased out in the conversation, or recognized or sought after or found out about, that need to, sometimes the Cancerian needs to come to terms with them. Like, for example, Saturn in Cancer might have had a very strict father, experienced extremely strict father. Mars in Cancer can be, same actually, things like that. So it's that sort of thing, or an angry home. Mars in Cancer someone growing up with a Mars in Cancer might have experienced quite an angry home as they grew up. And so they sometimes fly off the handle themselves because it's deep down in the nature to having seen that. They then possibly, project that as part of their life experience. Anyway, Jupiter in Cancer, however, exalted, luck, good fortune and opportunities come from family and sharing the feelings. Let's all get in this together and have a damn good time, as Jupiter in Cancer would say. Let's make this happen as a good thing because we're learning from it. It's going to be good. Let's all feel this. That's that, and so Jupiter in Cancer like that, So they're good with tribes or with groupings of people, all in the same place together and having a good time. It's quite Jupiter in Cancer, and the moon, of course, being in her domicile or her rulership, the lord of the Lady Luna, should we call her? So she's at her best there, because then the moods and feelings can be usually very easily defined, and someone can work out their emotional nature very much with the moon in Cancer, or they're good at working out other people's emotional nature, like being a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a counselor, moon in Cancer people, or nurse or doctors, so the caring people. So, well, I hope you found that interesting. So now we will move across to looking at some of today's charts. So today, what better choice? I've got a few royal charts today, of course, because they call themselves the Firm. A firm grip. The Cancer claw, the firm grip. Hereditary, ancestry, gone on for the same old family, inbreds. It's so Cancerian. They are so Cancerian, okay? So they're a perfect example to look at, right? And no better than good old Prince William, right? Who was born at a lunar eclipse, okay? In 1982, the sun and the moon conjunct together in the sign of Cancer in his 7th house. And we'll get onto that more in a minute. But when you have an eclipse, it's the solar eclipse is with a solar eclipse is when you have the new moon, so the sun and the moon together, okay, and with this symbol, which is called the North Node. Lots more on this to be taught later, but the point being here is that Prince William needed very much to have a good marriage. Okay, it was vitally important for him, particularly since he lost his mother at such a young age. Okay, so that's all his huge issues there that probably Kate Middleton has to deal with on a daily basis. So and he needs the support of his family. He needs the support of everything. So he is probably, I would say, really gone through a lot of stuff with the fact that his brothers left for America, okay? So there's probably quite a lot of stuff broiling there, okay, bubbling under that needs to be dealt with for him, okay? So, but take note of that he was born a Cancerian with the moon in Cancer, and this is the marriage, 7th house, okay? But there we go, all right? So that's enough on Prince William for now, okay? But we'll return to this chart at another later date. But that's a good example, a very good example of a Cancerian, okay? Next up, I've chosen George Orwell. George Orwell was actually born in India. He has the sun and the moon in Cancer with Neptune, okay? And, well, it's in his 8th, but also his 9th house. So what you're kind of looking at there is this idea of he was a writer, of course, 9th house, got published, but it's the feelings that he put across in his books that made him famous, right? 1984, Animal Farm, these sort of books, they transmitted very powerful feelings and emotions, okay? Very strong visionary with Neptune. So it's the sun with Neptune. You see, that's what I'm actually looking at. He's a sun Neptune. So he was a visionary, okay? So he was putting his visions across to people, through his writing. And that's all there is to say about him for the moment, because I'm just showing you the Cancerian traits and the power of emotion and feeling, okay? And remember Winston in 1984, how he was bereft of feelings and emotions. They stuck him away in the concrete room and all that sort of stuff, the solitary confinement and all that sort of thing. It was the bereftness of the feelings. Yeah. That's what he was trying to get across to people, and that, the isolation, which is not good for Cancerians, you see. But he was experiencing that. He felt that quite strongly. So there's also under in his books, you see, with the Sun, Neptune, Moon, they square Mars. So there was quite a lot of undercurrents of potential for violence in his whole story, you know, because the chart will show you the book, you know, the chart, everything in his chart is what he wrote about. Because actually he was writing about himself. You know, authors do. That's what they do. So, you know, it's their own experiences. You see, they have to have the experience first in order to write about it, or at least to connect to it, their own sense of vision or strength of understanding of life. So there you go, Sun, Neptune, okay, with the Moon and then the square to Mars. And then we've got Courtney Love, who dragged Kurt Cobain into well, a lot of people say that she was the one who loved him so much that she killed him. So that's quite interesting. But she grew up. I know a little bit about Courtney Love. Her father wrote a lot about the 1960s. It lived the 1960s very strongly, and it lived in San Francisco as the hippie rebellion, you know, or the hippie movement occurred, and wrote lots of books about a band called the Grateful Dead. And she was taken on tour, so she saw this clan or this tribe of people who love the music, and she became a rock musician herself because she sensed that, you know, of the passion of rock fans, of rock music and things. So she became a rock musician. It was kind of like a punk band, really, I guess. But you know, that Sun, Moon, in Cancer there is the love that will never die. She hasn't gone out with anybody since. With Kurt, you know, I don't think so. Anyway, I'm not absolutely certain, but she was like, "Oh, I will never have anybody to replace Kurt Cobain," type of thing. So just an interesting, you know, to think about that when you think about that story and the tragedy of the story, then add that element in there, the idea that she's a Sun Moon conjunction in Cancer with the North Node as well in Cancer, you know, and her midheaven even. Okay, so you know, there's a few pointers there to the retentiveness of memory, you know. And things like that. Another Cancerian is Diana, Princess of Wales, who, of course, had her birthday very close to William, right? So William's sun was at 0 Cancer and his moon at 3 or 4 Cancer. Her sun's at 9. Yeah. So again, hereditary ancestral families, the big nest, the tribe, the grouping, another version of the firm, aristocracy, and again the marriage, the idea of the marriage, 7th house. And for her, she had Sun trine Neptune. So this meant by being compassionate and caring of others, and boy, did she do more than her fair share of charity work and visiting all these places and being, what they called her, the Queen of Hearts, you see, because she had so much care and compassion for others. And that's the Sun trine Neptune and Mercury trine Neptune, you know, super sensitivity there, tons of sensitivity. In a trine to Chiron in Pisces. So there's a grand trine in water here. More on that later, another time. But of course, you know, I mean, there's a lot to say here about that chart. So I'm not going to go dive into the chart right now, but it's a great chart to study. Okay. And it's one of the favorite charts of astrologers because it's a fascinating when you look at her life, because her life was so well detailed. And so, yeah, the idea of the marriage again being the all important key to everything there. And the fact that there, you know, the moon rules Cancer, the moon was in Aquarius, which is cool, detached, independent, with the South Node, which was misfortune, or not misfortune, but difficulties. So, you know, Moon with the South Node in the 3rd house. Anyway, that's another time for another lesson, but you get the idea of what I'm trying to put across there. And then we have Elon Musk. We don't have a birth time for Elon Musk yet. He hasn't revealed it. everyone wants to know it, of course. All the astrology community would love to know his birth time. But he is Sun in Cancer with Mercury. Okay, Sun and Mercury in Cancer. I'm not sure about that midheaven, so don't disclude that. But he's Sun and Mercury in Cancer. I want you to take note that his Sun's at 6 degrees of Cancer, because there's someone else I'm going to show you in a minute who is another Cancerian who has Saturn right there on his Sun. And there's a link between the two. So what's he do? Well, he's very much into homes and houses. One of his big projects is solar tiles, or he's developing them. I think that's one of his next big products. Is putting the roof that solar charges the roof, home-based batteries, storage batteries, things like that. But the car, of course, but the car's got to look good and feel good, and it's the feeling. All right. As I said, we don't know his birth time, but that is a very strong indicator. Again, look how, when it comes to like the billionaires, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, they I'm looking at the planets in Cancer. It's that feeling of, if they feel safe and secure, they can build and be very powerful. And that is the one of the gifts of Cancer. If they feel safe, they can create immense power. Okay, so that's key. Very important to understanding. So understanding him, he's Sun square Uranus, and so Sun at 6 degrees Cancer. The square here goes to 9 degrees of Uranus. So this again is, Uranus is modern technologies and inventions and inventiveness. So there you go. You see, Tesla cars and all the rest of it. But he was apparently horrifically bullied when he was young. So there might be a lot of past memory withheld there that brings up a lot of issues for him now, and is why he's made to be so successful, is because, so we'll get his birth time eventually. Someone will find it for us, Oh, here's another royal. Lots of them tonight. Camilla Parker Bowles, Camilla Parker Bowles. We have an accurate time for her. This is her chart. It's spot on. Now, who made the racist comment? Who made the racist comment, everybody? I wonder who made the racist comment. Well, I'm not sure. But do you know that phrase that sometimes aristocrats like use? He's not PLU, or she's not PLU, darling. PLU meaning people like us, right? So when you've got someone with 4 planets in Cancer, right? The Sun, Mercury, Venus and the Moon, which is the sense of belonging, right? The tribe, the group, the firm. The 12th house is the house of self-undoing, okay? The house of self-undoing. And then you've got, well, you see, I'm going right into the chart here, probably saying too much, actually. But I'll just say, when you've got 4 planets, I'll stick to the Cancerian stuff tonight. When you've got 4 planets in Cancer in the 12th house, right? How likely is it, the 12th house being, let's just call it the house of self-undoing, all right? And so you've got all your feelings all grouped up there, lots of feeling, lots of sensation and emotion and tied up stuff, right? With Mercury, that would speak it, Sun, Mercury, who made the comment? There we go. I'm not saying who made the comment because I don't know. But I'm showing you a chart that's very interesting at this particular moment in time. So moving on, we've got Liv Tyler. and so this is the Sun and Mercury. She has the Sun and Mercury, okay, together on her ascendant in Cancer. So, of course, the Cancerian ascendant is classic beauty, like one of the goddess, Liv Tyler, she was in the Lord of the Rings, and they had that very soft focus, like her and Kate Blanchett, for both those movies, they gave them total soft focus with kind of, that sort of diamante, glittery kind of, dreamy elven. That's what I'm trying to. They were the elves, and her and Kate Blanchett, and her voice was incredibly important. I think, if I remember correctly, in The Lord of the Rings, there was moments in the film that was put across with that voice. You had a particular way of saying things or putting something across that brought about huge emotions in the audience. There was something about it that was very special. So she had a great impact in that movie. There was something very amazing about it. Anyway, probably one of her most powerful films. But it was this. And you see, elves themselves would be a group unto their own. They're like a tribe, right? Or a race, So you're looking at this idea of Cancerians, okay? And so she represented that. She shone for that tribe or that race in the form of acting, of course, and she put that across as very strong feelings and emotions, So Liv Tyler, daughter of a rock star, Steve Tyler of Aerosmith. So again, the idea of seeing fans, right? I think are very Cancerian, because they get obsessed and possessed about a band. They love it. They collect everything. They go to all the gigs. They want to feel part of the band. So it's that Cancerian thing. Cancerians also, by the way, are collectors, right? Oh God, they're brilliant collectors. So and hoarders, okay? So Cancerians are the sort of people who have been collecting a particular type of cup. I get these, collect cups. I've got all these different cups. Loads. Or I don't know, anything that they'll collect things. And they'll be brilliant at it. They're absolutely brilliant. And they'll get it precisely correct. Everything, is because it gives them a good feeling. It connects them to their past. And it makes them feel like they're part of it. And so Cancerians are great collectors of something. So it could be a stamp collection, but it could be fashion or clothes. It could be museums. So you'll find Cancerians in museums. You'll find them in old curio shops, antiques business, antiques restoration. These are the sort of places where you'll find Cancerians. And collectors and hoarders, people who can't get rid of something, and so, I mean, sometimes you get TV programs with someone whose house is just jam-packed full of stuff, and then they say, God, they open up the garage, and I watched one about, I can't remember how many months ago it was. I happened to watch something on TV, and I was just like, it's a Cancerian, because you could see that they had stuff that was valued hugely, because it had just gained over time. Yeah, it was like some electronic games from the 1980s. And they were like, still unboxed, still in their boxes, brand new with receipts and stuff, but left for 40 years. And the people going, God, this is amazing, And the hoarder completely forgotten that they existed, but they had good memories of it. Anyway, you get the idea. Here's a great example of a Cancerian. Okay, so it's Khloe Kardashian, right? Because this is someone with 3 planets in Cancer. So now we've got the Venus involved. So we've got here Sun, Venus, and Mercury in the 5th house. Okay, Sun and Venus opposite Jupiter. Okay, big fortunes, big things. But the whole idea is the Kardashians have the family. They call themselves the Kardashians, and it's reality TV all about their family. Everything. What's in the fridge, what the dog did yesterday, who they're going to, what they're going to do tonight, what they're going to do next week, what it was like last year, and all this, right? Boyfriends, girlfriends, marriages, divorces, all the strange occurrences of a family recorded on television, and people are fascinated. They love it. Okay. Because Kardashians is like a kind of obsession. People are obsessed and possessed by the Kardashians. They love them. So when you've got 3 planets in Cancer opposite Jupiter, well, it's not a surprise, really, is it? I mean, I want to talk about my family too, says this person. Would say Khloe Kardashian, yeah, we'll do this, because the Jupiter is the bigger audience, you see, is the big, what, you want to talk about my family and make series after series and pay me millions of dollars to do it? Why not? So she becomes like a fashion icon or a style icon, which is very 5th house. So there's a kind of lots of planets in Cancer, her family and their trends and their a la mode, their style, their fashion, Venus, is hugely projected into the world as a thing, and with the opposition to Jupiter just makes it big. It's this idea of let's make it big, bigger, biggest, and so there they go. You see, and that's their success right there. And tons of emotions with them. She's got these planets in Cancer, trining here, Saturn and Mars. So there's always stuff to do with breakups and difficulties that adds to the drama. It's like a living soap opera, a soap opera without a script. That is the Kardashians, and it's, of course, as you know, hugely popular. Now, here's another character, Nikola Tesla, the inventor. All right. Several planets in Cancer, including Saturn at 5 degrees of Cancer. And remember, I was talking about Elon Musk earlier, and his sun is at 6 degrees of Cancer. So the legacy of Nikola Tesla had great restrictions in what he could do. Okay, he was literally squashed by JP Morgan, and all the others who they stole his patents. They introduced the form of electricity that he actually didn't want people to use. And they squashed his life out. He had a, very, very difficult, he ended up lived a recluse, lonely and recluse in a new hotel for about 30 years. His last 30 years of his life was in a room in a hotel feeding the pigeons in the open window. That's what he actually did. That's what he's recorded as doing. But the very sad thing, you see, because he did actually create inventions for the world. He did amazing things, in fact. In fact, my favorite thing that's not very well known, but I did find out about it, and I think I'm fairly certain it's true, is he supplied the free energy machine, which was the engine that drove Amelia Earhart's plane from America to France. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. She didn't refuel once in 5,000 miles. Why? Why is that not recorded in history? Because she used Nikola Tesla's free energy machine as the engine. No one talks about that, but it's true. And he gave her the second engine he gave her for the plane was for the Pacific journey, but she never completed that journey. Anyway, so interesting though, isn't it? So he's a Sun Venus in Cancer with the Saturn, okay, and Elon Musk has got his sun on Tesla's Saturn. So Elon Musk feels very strongly about Tesla's legacy, and has therefore now become the world's richest billionaire because he's recreating all the inventions that Tesla created originally that didn't get his fame. So Elon Musk is now doing that for him on his behalf. So it's quite interesting. That's an interesting point of what legacy is. Saturn being the boundaries, the limits, the restrictions in life, what one does in life. And then Elon Musk got born one day apart, 6 degrees, 5 degrees. There's a really interesting synastry there. So and he calls his car Tesla. You see. So there we go. I thought you'd be interested in that. And then we've got Michael Phelps, who is the most gold medal winning Olympic swimmer in America's history. He won more gold medals than the one before him from the 1970s. There was an American before him who's gold medal swimmer, and his name eludes me now. But I looked into Phelps's chart quite a lot a few years ago because he had his moment in the Olympics. He won like 16 gold medals or something. And of course, what would a sportsman have but a Sun-Mars conjunction? And what does he do? Swims. What do you need for swimming? You need water. And so Cancer is a water sign. So there you wind the motor up, put it in the water, and you've got Sun and Mars, and it swims until it wins. So Sun, Mars, yeah. Even though Mars is in its fall in that sign, it's still it has a goal and a target, and that's to get across the pool. So and he wins every single time. Huge energy resource, and therefore inexhaustible. Therefore wins gold medals. I remember looking at his chart because, well, I'm going into too much astrology if I do that, but there's another thing. that I thought was very interesting. He has a dolphin star, one of the stars called the Dolphin in Aquarius here. But you see, that's me going off on doing his chart. Tonight, we're just going to look at this. The water sign Cancer. He has the sun. He's recognized for his sensitivity. But again, Cancers are able to do phenomenal things if they feel safe and secure. And that is a good example. And he was doing it for his homeland, America. He was swimming for United States in the Olympics. And so the sun in Cancer. And of course, America is a Cancerian nation. July the 4th, 1776, is a Cancerian nation. So America and England, or UK, is Capricorn. And that's why there's similarities and differences between us. Okay? England's Capricorn, America's Cancer. And there's more to say on that another time, but just keep that in mind. America is a Cancerian nation. And so the home in America and family is hugely important to them. Hugely important. And they have a great amount of patriotism as well. So there we go. And then we've got Cyndi Lauper, the singer. Girls just want to have fun, right? Well, they do. When they've got Sun and Mars together in Cancer, damn sure they do want to have some fun. So, her song, right? I mean, she had other songs as well, but I think that's the one. And the key word here is want. Yeah. Cancerian is a water sign, a feminine sign, right? The fifth house, okay, is about having having a good time. So girls just want to have fun would be the want is the Mars, right? So it's girls, the sun in Cancer, right? Just want Mars to have fun, fifth house. So that's her big single and still gets radio play today, So she's still earning her royalty checks from the song. Girl, there it is. It speaks for itself in the chart. Okay, so that's I think quite good. And the Mars trines the Moon as well to add to the. In fact, actually, again, I'm probably saying too much astrology, but Mars rules Scorpio up here. The Moon's in Scorpio. The Moon rules Cancer, so this is called a mutual reception. But that's probably again saying a bit too much astrology for now. But it's enough to realize that that's again one of the indicators as to why she had good success for her songwriting, for her being a pop singer. Completely other end of the spectrum, we've got Mike Tyson. All right. Ferocious boxer, But you see, Cancerians, let's look at the Cancerians again. They have a shell, they are protective, and they are defensive, and they can be very aggressive if they're prodded. You see, you can't prod a crab very much. You don't want to prod a crab very much. You want to leave them alone, you see. Otherwise, they bite your ear off. Well, don't mean that's not... It's kind of like meant to be a bit of a not very funny joke, I guess. But Mike Tyson was known. That's what he did, and so he's the sun in Cancer. Okay, he had a terrible upbringing as a child, bullied, beaten up. He had to defend himself because of the lack of family support. There wasn't any. I think he was in a boys' home, or an orphan or something like that. He had it really tough in Brooklyn. Okay, so boxing, was where he found his safety, and of course the sun with Jupiter here is the good fortune. He won heavyweight boxing championship titles several times. He didn't just win it once. He was in a winning streak. Once he got it, he held on to it like a Cancerian would. And he became notorious, of course, with his power and his ferocity and aggressiveness, that he was even considered to be a dangerous person. So but that's what could be called the unevolved Cancer, you see, So you're looking here at someone who had a very difficult life, and again, let's look at this and another chart to look at another time, I think. mainly because we don't have his birth time, by the way. I didn't find the birth time in time today. So I've given him a 12 noon chart, But I would think that this would be key to him setting up his sense of protection or protectiveness, building his shell around himself. So, and one other thing I remember about him is he built this phenomenally massive house. He built like one of the world's most expensive houses, spent, a huge amount of money on the most luxurious house in the world, and then went bankrupt. And the house is still, I believe, I'm not absolutely certain, but I think it's empty today because no one else wanted to live in it because it was a bit gaudy or something like that. But there's something that I think his house is an empty property, because he put loads of his fortune into the house. But of course, the Cancerians is house and homes, you see, homesteads and the foundation. And so he put loads into it. And, something went wrong there. So now that brings us to the Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo, I think I brought her up before, is a Sun Neptune, so visionary, strong art, right? But a lot of self-sacrifice in her life there. She had a terrible accident that gave her a lot of difficult health problems. But she did this very unique form of art. And even after her life, even after she died, she still hadn't properly been discovered. She was highly rated in Mexico. But then it was, I think, Madonna, the pop singer, who spotted her as being someone who was really different and decided that she liked Kahlo's art. And so she started buying it. And of course, that quadrupled its value in a year. And and now it's millions and millions of dollars and all her artwork's everywhere. It's now like iconic. But this is way after Frida Kahlo's died. You see, so she never saw any, as artists like Van Gogh and all these sort of people, sometimes they make these art and they have no idea what's going to happen later in life. It's collectibles. What was I saying about Cancerians? Someone with a lot of planets in Cancer, well, they can make the art that becomes collectible as well, you see? So it's the idea of having things, yeah? And so she created this art that's now is everywhere. It's printed on books and postcards and bags. I just saw someone walking with a bag the other day. I was at traffic light. Someone walked in across the road, and I saw with a Frida Kahlo bag that had one of her. And I was just like, God, so everywhere, right? The amazing artwork, you see, has now become this sort of iconic thing, right? So, and again, you see Sun Jupiter. Sun, Jupiter, luck, right? A lot of luck with the node even, bring Jupiter node together and you're starting to look at that really good fortune for the future. The North Node aims for the future, So she had something that was going to be future based, So it's interesting, isn't it, when you think like that, that here's someone who's now, her artwork is so highly sought after and it's just available everywhere as well. So interesting, isn't it? But here's someone else, the rock musician Jack White. Yeah, don't have a birth time for him, but interestingly enough, I've got two rock musicians charts now for you to look at here. We've got Jack White, who's Sun, Saturn, and Moon. So Sun, Saturn in Cancer. All right. Well, of course, that's the ethos there is to work very hard, right? To work very hard is what Jack White does. But it's interesting how when he did his White Stripes band, it was a two-piece band. It was him and his sister. His sister was the drummer, and he played the guitar and sang. Yeah, that was it, two-piece band. And at the time, everyone was like, wow, but family, right? Family. Him and his sister. Amazing, right? Cancerian to the core, right? He had feelings with his, the bond of the sibling relationship was so strong. They worked together, Saturn, Sun, Moon, right? They worked together to create this music that was, oh my God, they made millions, because Seven Nation Army, it was played at Olympic Games. It's, theme tunes for sports shows, all sorts of whatever, all that stuff. They had massive hits, massive radio play, but he worked very, very hard at it, and so that's the result. Yeah. A Sun, Saturn, Moon, would be incredibly ambitious. And it was the fact that he worked with his sister that made him feel all right. That's what made him feel like he could do it. The security from the family-based sibling relationship. I could only, maybe he couldn't work with other musicians. So he worked, but I could do it with his sister. I can work with my sister. And that was the key, that unlocked a lot of his creativity, So interesting. And Debbie Harry, Blondie, yeah. This is a time chart. So this is she has a Sun-Saturn conjunction with the North Node in the 9th house. And this is, of course, Blondie were part of the punk scene in New York, but they weren't making it that big. They were just another one of the punk bands in New York City, right? In that one particular, there was a club that they used to play in every couple of weeks, CBGB's or something like that. I think it's what it was called. And but they needed to be discovered, and they got discovered by English promoters who then brought them to the UK, and they were on top of the pops, and they went shot to the top, right? And they had all their biggest hits, right? Were England. England launched them, and 9th house is traveling abroad. Right, so they worked very hard at doing their punk thing, their punk ethos, and the punk ethos, of course, we're all in this. They had their own tribe. It was a tribe, yeah. But her allure and her beauty drew the audience. Grew in Europe first, and they toured more in Europe than they did in America for the first few years. Or they did so many tours of England, always in England touring. If you go back, I mean, this is a fan-based thing, I guess. But I watched a biography. I watched one of those TV shows on them, and they were talking about that. How they made it in England more than before America. They had 3 #1 hits in America before they charted in the States properly. But 3 of them number 1 hits in the UK before they properly charted. It was all here that it happened, and then they went to America. Then they got noticed everywhere. So that's interesting because the 9th house, you see, so. The traveling thing, and but this Sun Saturn again is working very hard at something, and she's got the Mercury in Cancer as well, which would be quite the dreamy voice, there's a lot of sensitivity in that voice, in how she sings, and then they had that huge hit where they had massive problems with their record companies for years, the royalties and the contracts that they'd signed. They made no money for a long time. And then they got rediscovered, and they had a revival around about the year 2000. They had a massive revival, and they had that song called, which kind of was like, I think it was called Maria, something, and it's still on the radio today. But they were singing, and they were singing it was a sort of like a spiritual song that was actually for the kind of Catholic church, not for it because they're not Catholic church, but it had religious overtones in the lyrics. You have to listen to it. Maria kind of thing, and this is this, 9th house has a religious quality to it, and I think it comes through in that song. And that was the song that made the millions. The band, the original band, they all got back together, and suddenly they made their money, proper money. I mean, really, they really made it. And the rest of the record industry were like, God, thank God, Blondie have finally got something that they justified, because they had been very badly ripped off in the early years. Anyways, someone who's just retired, and this is a time chart as well, Angela Merkel. She has literally just said she's done. I think she retired yesterday, actually, or last week. Sun conjunct Uranus. Uranus is the reformer and the awakener, 8th house. So this is the reunified Germany, very Cancerian, okay, the homeland, right, the motherland, the fatherland, the homeland. She was very much key to helping create a political system based on reunification that helped sort of bring together she was very active for about 20 years in politics. And it's the Sun Uranus in her chart. You see, very close together there. Uranus being the reformer, the awakener, almost like a revolutionary, actually. Eighth house, of course, would be linked to politics because it's money. But it's very much the sense of what can we do with this big land? What are we going to do now? Let's create a union. Let's all come together as a big tribe. And she was very much so key to all of that. And at the end of it all, Pluto here in Capricorn, Saturn, Pluto, Capricorn conjunction opposed her Sun and Uranus. So as Brexit was happening in the UK, she was just dumbfounded because the UK, of course, had helped set up Brexit, helped set up the EU in the first place. So why, she was just like, what are you guys doing? I don't get it. And she's now retired. So, but that's because she had, that Saturn Pluto opposition she was just like, oh, all right then, So she stepped out of the way. But that's an interesting what she did. You see, the reformer, the awakener. We can do something with all this. We can really make something here. So that's what she did. Sun Uranus, innovator, inventor even. And the last chart tonight is Dan Aykroyd, who is another Sun Uranus, and with Venus. Okay, so the planet of relationships and love, and people like him. He's a popular guy. He's very funny, and whenever I think of Dan Aykroyd, the first thing I think of is the Blues Brothers, that really classic movie from the very early 1980s with John Belushi, two brothers, family, Cancerian, coming out of the nun-based orphanage, with that hilarious scene with the nun and all that. It's all Cancerian. Where they came from, and how they've got to, save the band, which is all the bonding together. So the whole movie is very blues, is very Cancerian. The Blues Brothers is an incredibly Cancerian movie. And if you haven't watched it for a while, go watch it again because it's hilarious. And it's all about gangs and tribes and feeling together. Aretha Franklin in her soul food cafe, the good old boys in their truck, everything. It's hilarious on a Cancerian level. It's loaded with Cancerian themes, that film. Absolutely jam-packed full of them. How he's released from jail at the beginning, the confinement of things, and then they get back to save the band, we all want to work together in one big feeling, get it all back happen. And the one song that I think he's the thing is that song. He used to sing a song where he used to say really funny words that meant nothing. And it's Uranus. It's the Sun Uranus. He'd be, you have to watch the movie or you have to listen to some Blues Brothers records to get what I'm talking about there. But he had this particular way. He had a funny dance. And he was just, he's just one of his best characters. So, and then, of course, he's, the other one is, the one that immediately comes to mind is he's played aliens. I think he's done at least one I'm thinking of where he had the cone head. That's a hilarious Hollywood movie about aliens. And of course, Sun Uranus would have to be outer space or alien-like, or but he's done other things. So what I'm looking at is that slightly, and Saturday Night Live, of course, is where he launched. And that was the nuttiness. They were very, very improv. Saturday Night Live, the strength of Saturday Night Live is improv, and so you've got Sun Cancer, Sun in Cancer, a group of people, again, all joining together to do improvisation, which is a lot of love shown through that, because we're all together making people laugh. Everyone enjoys it. And the Uranus is that nutty bit, the eccentricity, the eccentricity. So that's a sort of improv comedian, right? One of his strengths is you can just stick him up on stage and he'll improv and people love it. So there we go. And thank you for choosing me as your astrologer. It's a pleasure to teach you. I really enjoy teaching you. And we shall see. I hope you have some great insights developing as a result of this understanding of the crab. And summer's on its way. Okay, we're in Pisces. Next time we talk, it'll be the spring equinox and the sun will be in Cancer. I beg your pardon, the sun will be in Aries. So that's when we speak in 2 weeks' time. So we're coming to the end of winter, and best of luck in all your endeavors, and see you all again soon.